so big. Like that's why the Big 12 is just doing it well. Although I guess the Big 12 is going to have to do it differently once they
Mm.
get the four new teams. But there'll be a 12 team. They will be the Big 12 at that point.
Yes.
So I think it's yeah, I can't hate on the Pac-12 doing it, except for it just seems weird before you adjust the scheduling, because you could just have someone that's in the Pac-12 South that's got a much more difficult schedule, or vice versa, and two teams from the north make it in, or something like that. You know what I mean? So it seems like until you balance out the schedule, you kind of have to keep the divisions as is. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense for like the big picture. I think that's really going to be the only way to do it. Like when the SEC, when you're talking about a 16 team conference, like you're going to have to just take the two best conference records, which essentially is what best winning percentage is saying. I guess if you get a game canceled, the percentage could be different or something, but that's essentially what it's saying. I think it seems like an overreaction in terms of like the fan reaction to it, because like it's not going to be that many. There's not going to be that many years where it was even really an option for like. Usually, the team that wins the SEC East, SEC West, those are usually like basically the two best teams in the conference. Like there's some
Mm.
exceptions in there, and with multiple conferences, like the Big Ten is definitely one that the Big Ten East seems much better than the Big Ten West. Seems like those are the two best teams are usually in that division. But it's just I hate that we want to take so much off of the field when it comes to college football. It's like while you might have your opinion on the East is stronger or the West is stronger, there are those instances where like they may be rare, but there's instances where there's a lot of good teams that can kind of beat each other up, and then the team that comes out of that division is actually a lot better than you think they are. Like that sort of thing can happen a lot, and so it's like to have these lopsided, say if it's in the Big Ten or something, to have these lopsided conferences or divisions, and Wisconsin could win that, and you just decide to play Ohio State, Michigan part two because they're the best two teams. Like Wisconsin, you didn't play anybody. Whatever your opinion is, it seems like a slippery slope. Like while you can do the divisions, it seems like you're playing all these teams. Whoever comes on top should be in the conference championship.
Yeah, I mean, you could sell me on just not doing the conference championship games anyway, but I don't know. I think we're just going to see more shuffling. Friend of the pod, Late Kicks, Josh Pate, he mentioned this. I think I was listening to this today, where he talked about one of the pros, because he's pretty anti college football playoff expansion like myself, and the one positive of expansion is that like you're going to see more teams scheduling better out of conference schedules, because they're not as concerned about dropping an out of conference game early in the season to a good team, another Power 5 team. So we're going to see more home and homes versus the travesty we just saw take place on the Tennessee football Twitter timeline this week, with Tennessee dropping the Provo trip for the Cougs to play in Nashville against Tony Elliott's Virginia Cavaliers, which we'll get to in a second. But I don't know. I just think it's more change, man. It's pretty wild. A lot of changes happening, and we have to keep an eye on that bill that's circulating in California. You and I are not legal scholars, so I'm not going to pretend to have like a strong take on the matter. But there's a good piece by Zach Barnett in Football Scoop that folks can go check out if they want to learn more about what's going on, especially ahead of Thursday's decision and what's going to happen there. But I don't know. I think it's kind of funny that I've gotten kind of conditioned to the daily, just like, what's college football going to do today? I'm hesitant to like even put together our show sheet, because I'm like, I feel like there's going to be 9 other things the sport decides to do tomorrow that's going to throw everything up in the air, right?
Oh yeah, seriously. But I had another. It's like stayed on this topic with Pac-12 scheduling. I'm not exactly aware of the Pac-12 as much as I am the SEC. Like I'll admit that when the SEC was at the 12 team conference, they would always play 6 games against their division, or 5 games I should say against their division, and then 3 games from the other division. Right now the Pac-12 is playing a 9-game conference schedule, right? So they're playing 4 teams from the other division. And are none of those locked? Are any of those like locked rivals like they have in the in the SEC? Are you aware, or are we just seeing four, kind of a rotation of four teams? Like you get six teams in probably every 4 years or so. They might play everybody home and home, I would think.
I'm really not
So
sure off the top of my head.
I'm not 100% sure how they have the scheduling set up, but if you are one of those teams that maybe avoids some of the better teams in the Pac-12 North or something this year, say I don't have USC and like Utah's schedule right in front of me, but if they did avoid the better teams in the Pac-12 North, and then they both end up having records in the best team in the Pac-12 North, just based on the schedule and who they played, it just wouldn't seem right for both of them to get into the conference championship. And I honestly think the rematch would go against somebody. Like last year, or in 2020 or something, if we're going, although granted, I don't think A&M and Florida were tied, but hypothetically, if they were, bad example, I guess, because A&M beat Florida. But say Georgia and A&M were tied and they didn't play. If A&M has a loss to Alabama and Georgia has yet to play Alabama and they have the same record, it seems like the rematch would almost go against that team. It's like, well, we saw you play them. We haven't seen them play them yet. You know, like, I don't know. It's we don't want to see the same games. Like, we don't mind seeing if they're the best teams, but if there's a debate on who the best teams are, like, I don't think anyone would have minded seeing, LSU, Alabama Part 2 back in 2019. But Georgia was also a 11-1 team ranked like number 5 or something at that point. It's hard to justify Alabama getting a second shot at LSU, especially since I think Alabama lost to Auburn too the week before. But regardless, I think the rematch might almost it feels like that should be the second or third tiebreaker. Like if we're trying to get to it, it's like I don't know who to pick. You guys already played them. Let's pick someone else.
I mean, my gut is to follow. Does FCS? They don't do conference championship games, do they? Unless I'm mistaken, I don't think they do. In FCS, they just jump right into the playoff format, and I mean that's what they do in high school.
Is that right?
Yeah, high school. You win your region, and then you go into the tournament. Like you go into the playoffs. Like you just move on. You're like, yeah, winning your region's cool, and it's a big deal for a lot of programs. But ultimately, you jump into the playoff pool and you move forward. I think it's just kind of silly that we do the conference championship games. I would rather, if we expand the playoff, I would get rid of them. I would
oh man, we're already. I feel like the worst part about college football compared to college basketball is there's such a limited way to measure like tangible success, and I feel like conference championships. So you can have all these smack talk like, oh well, you guys haven't won anything. It's like, well, we win 80% of our games, right? Like we're a good team. We haven't won a championship, but you still have a conference championship. You still want those accolades, like those achievements. Like if you get rid of conference championships, then literally the entire sport, all we care about is the playoff. And every game that's not a playoff implications is like an irrelevant game.
But that's what they're inching towards anyway. That's what they want. Just give them what they want. Let's just stop the charade.
That's not what we want. That's not what we want. Some people might want that.
It's not what I want.
You need conference championships.
Well, here's my other here's what I'll also throw, and it kind of speaks to what you're saying about the body blow thing. If we expand the playoff, and then you have the top 2 best teams in the SEC, what we're going to see, and this is something that I think if every program's honest about it, it's just depth is going to be the champion year over year from now on. Like there's no path to you contending seriously. There was already a shallow pool of realistic contenders in the 14 playoff or even in the BCS era. But if you do best team, like it was a break for Auburn to get Mizzou in the SEC title game. And sometimes you need those.
Well, but remember, Missouri, I think they lost to like Toledo or someone early in the year, right? But they were like ranked number 5, number 4 going to the SEC championship. Like they were a really good team that year. They weren't as good as Alabama, but
right. Or that's what I'm saying. They weren't as good as like several other SEC West teams that year. And my theory is that like we'll see. It's just going to be hard. So if you're asking an SEC program to run the gauntlet in the SEC, a 16-team SEC with Oklahoma and Texas in it, then play the best team at the second best team in your conference, beat them 2, and then win 3 consecutive Power 5 games basically, and some of them at home, maybe in neutral site. the only rosters that can handle that kind of wear and tear and that much of a grind are going to be the best of the best, the deepest of the deep. It's just going to be extremely difficult to ask a lot of these programs to go on that kind of run. I think when you hear like folks like Saban talk about parity, and people just jump on him for anything that he's saying, but like ultimately I get where he's coming from, and I think a lot of fans would prefer that, but the expansion of college football playoff is going to have the inverse effect there, where I don't think when you switch to this model, you do the pods, you do more in-conference games if you're an SEC program. So you have 9 SEC games plus the SEC title game plus 3 playoff games. You're Mississippi State, you're Arkansas, you're whoever, you're a good program, you're an Ole Miss, you have a great year. You can finish number 2 in the SEC one year. Guess what? You get through and you're still in the playoff, and then you're like, all right, we went 10-2 this year. We won an upset against Georgia in the SEC title game. What's our treat? Penn State on a neutral site, and then another SEC team in round 2, and then the national title against like Ohio State or something. Like, it's just that's asking a lot. Somebody has to win it, but it will just be a select few. It will be a very, very small number, and I guess that's kind of how it's always been. But I think it will grow even smaller, and I kind of will bet on who wins it every year based on who I think is the deepest team in college football that can withstand the most injuries.
Yeah, but I mean, that's already kind of
True.
Part of who wins it every year, right? I mean, it's like college football's always been a top-heavy sport. I just wonder how they're going to do the tiebreakers, because like in the SEC, like for example, like 2003, SEC East, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida all I think lost one or two. They lost the same number of conference games and all beat each other essentially, lost to the other one. And I think they went by the BCS standings. Same way with Texas A&M or Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Texas in 2009, 2008, when all of them were so good. I think they went by the BCS standings, which kind of sucked, because it's like, well, we all beat each other, and the rankings are basically going to be based on the preseason rankings, right? That's who's going to be at the top. So you can't really go college football ranking in that scenario, because there's people, like there's a committee like picking the college football playoff. Like, it doesn't seem as pure as like, oh, let's let the computers decide kind of who amongst these 3 teams is the best, since they all beat each other. It's like we're letting a committee decide. Like, I don't know. It's like we're not. There's while everyone else is looking at the top 4 or something, they're getting shifty with this number 7 and 8 and 9 or something to determine conference divisions and things like that. I don't know. It would just I'm curious to how they're going to do it. Where they're going to have to do something when it comes to these new bigger conferences, but I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Dan Mullen.